Hello and welcome to Bonk Table. I'm Mass and this is another Conquest battle report. Today's matchup is 100 Kingdoms vs City States, and the list that I am playing today was a requested list by Massa88 on the General Conquest Discord. So Massa shot me a message and was like, hey man, do you want to do Sealed Temple? I am kind of in a bet with another buddy and I need a battle report. And I'm like, okay, sure, I can do Sealed Temple. Like, as I look into their stats, they're pretty, I want to say, like, generic, but they're enough for what I want them to do, and they fit this perfect, like, jack-of-all-trades cavalry unit that's actually really good and can be used to unlock some of the more punchier things in 100 Kingdoms, especially in the order side for, like, Ash and Dawn. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll make a list, I'll find out how this goes. So I made 2 lists, and this is the second one, I sent them off to Massa88, and he was like, hey, you know what, do the second one, because I think it's more fair and balanced, and I'm like, okay, cool. After playing this list, there's actually a change I want to make that is, basically, I just change up the Imperial Officers Warband, and that changes, scrolling down here, Steel Legion, you see there's 6 stands, they're in Veterans and everything, like, I'll get more into the list, but the change is, I would actually have this unit. I think it's still in Veterans, or it's not. I'm not 100% sure how it was, but I basically take off the 6 stands. I believe I take Armor of Dominion and Long Lineage off of the Priority Commander, and I throw in a Fire Mage with a Men-at-Arms unit, because I would like one more scoring unit for scenario, and then I think it's good. Like, it'll be a solid list. So, and that was my revision 3, and that's kind of what I made after I played this game. You know, like, you play it, you're like, okay, you know, here are some things that are weak and blah blah blah, like, what can I do to shore it up? So this is what I played though for this game. So Massa88, this is your battle report. It's all about you, buddy. Alright, so first thing, Priority Commander, Sealed Temple. This is how you get the Sealed Temple as mainstay. And this guy's Impact 5, his Quicksilver Strike, so he basically duels first before any dueling happens. So he's kind of a pretty good dueling character, considering he's Clash 4, 6 attacks, 6 wounds, defense resolve 4, defense 4. That's a pretty good stat line, especially for dueling first. So he's a premium dueling character. The problem is he's not allowed to take any retinue. He can only take masteries, and if you want any heirlooms, you gotta take Long Lineage. So if you want to take Disorienting Strike Mastery and like Caliburn Brawn, you can't do it. And that's kind of the issue with the Order Cavalry characters, is that they have very little customization ability because they're so limited, because they can only take masteries, and the only time you can get heirloom is through the Long Lineage Mastery, and it's like, thanks? Like, that's kind of one of my critiques about the orders, especially on the horses, is that they're really limited on what they can take. Like, the Mounted Noble Lord can still get heirlooms, can still take masteries. Like, why not the Priority Commanders? It's just weird. And for some reason, it's like a lore bit where the Sealed Temple are like the keepers of all the treasures. Like, you have all the treasures. Bring out all the goddamn treasures. You're going to fight and die. Like, potion seller, I need your strongest potions. If you get where that reference is, you've been around for a while. Yeah, it's just weird. I threw Armor Dominion on this guy, mostly because I want him to sit in an Order of Ash and Dawn, because he's got 6 attacks, he's Clash 4, kind of the same offensive power as the Ash and Dawn. And I was like, oh, you know what, I'll just throw Armor Dominion on him, so it makes Ash and Dawn like a bit more harder to deal with, because if any stands are touching that character, they use Cleave and Smite. And then we get into the Order to Sealed Temple. I might talk a bit about this. So these guys, 8 speed, that's really good. Clash 3, 4 attacks, 4 wounds, resolve 4, defense 3, the shield going up to defense 4, no evasion. That stat line, just off its bat, is actually really good. It's a very solid stat line, especially for medium cavalry, what are speed 8. Like, they're quick, they got some decent attacks at 4 attacks per stand, they're Clash 3, so they're getting Inspires to 4. They are Resolve 4, so they're staying around pretty well as being Defense 4 with that shield. So they have a bit of survivability, like more survivability than Men-at-Arms, Household Knights, and they're also mediums, and they're costed pretty well at 170 points, and you have to throw 15 extra points for the banner, because why not? Like, let's go, horse. They then have Impact 4. It's like, okay, 4 impacts on Clash 3, nothing special, no brutal, no none of that. So that's fine, but the big rule that's on them is actually fluid formation. And I took a couple extra pictures in this battle report to kind of show how I use fluid formation, I believe on turn 4. So you'll see those and I'll explain it as I go, but you can start spinning this unit around in really weird ways because you just get like a free reform. So let's go check out fluid formation. There it is. This regiment may perform a free additional reform action during its activation. This free reform action must be performed before the regiment takes its first action or at the end of its activation after all other actions have been resolved. So you get this at the start or end. And this is really nice because I actually use this to reform, run past my opponent, then next turn I reform and side charge them. Because it's like, okay, I got a free reform. Like I don't have to do spend my action to do a reform. So the Order of the Steel Temple are surprisingly maneuverable because of that fluid formation, because there's speed 8. They're not going to be taking the world for damage because they're only class 3 or 4 attacks, so their impact attacks are like, yay, 4 at clash 3, and then another 4 at clash 4 because you're inspiring. And them being movement 8 allows them to get that charge in, so they become this jack of all trades cavalry. Like, this is what I view as a jack of all trades cavalry compared to like the Household Knights, where people are like, oh, the Household Knights are correct. And it's like, no, not really. There's like, unless you upgrade, like you put veterans on them and run a big unit so they get to clash 3. But like, if you're doing that, you might as well just start like putting Wedge and Faint's Roar to get like a big buffed hammer unit that's going to do a ton of damage, or you're running a bunch of MSUs, what are just running around at clash 2, and maybe they have like the re-rolling on impact for the 6s. Like they're just fast men at arms, just being in the way because they're speed 7. Like they sit at either the bottom end of cavalry, where you're just spamming a bunch of them, or they sit at the top end of cavalry, where you're just being a big hammer and hitting stuff. Order of Steel Temple land right in the middle of that cavalry kind of like scale of what you want them to do and how they act. They're kind of like perfectly in the middle of 100 Kingdoms cavalry of like, they're cheap, they're fast, they're maneuverable, they're survivable, they got some decent damage. Like they fit that very well. And the best part about them that I actually really like, especially in all horse lists, especially in like a little bit of a dip. Like if you're ever doing a dip in list building, this is a concept that I hopefully next episode of the podcast, when we talk about armory lists, is that I'll get into. And the dip is like, you dip into something. So if like you've built your list, it's like we'll use Dweg, fuck it. So you got your hold ray, you got a bunch of hold warriors, you got some ballistas, you got dragon slayers, you got this very like dwarven defense brick, and then you want to take just a tempered sorcerer with a unit of Fireforge, and you want to like put some points on that tempered sorcerer. That's a dip. So you kind of like dip into that other warband to help whatever your main idea is. So a dip in 100 Kingdoms would be taking a chapter mage with some men-at-arms or merc crossbows, or taking a theist priest on some militia, so build like, because you want the character, you don't necessarily want the unit, or you want an idea that's easy to get into. And for this dip, it would be Prior Commander of the Steel Temple, Order of the Steel Temple, Order of Ashen Dawn. So you have a good medium generalist cavalry with a solid tanky brawler cavalry with a character, because you got the character to get the warband, but that's your dip. And the rest of your army is, let's say it's Imperial Officer running like Steel Legion and Gilded Legion and all the different archers and crap. So that's going on there. This list is split 50-50 between the Imperial Officer and a Prior Commander of Steel Temple. He's the Warlord, Imperial Officer is the Warlord. Oh, I never clicked it. Anyway, Imperial Officer has Rapid Deploy. But back to Order of the Steel Temple. Blessed on them is also really nice because they're that defense 4. And if there's no cleave or a little bit of cleave, you can still reroll to get more saves. Or if you know you're going to die and you're trying to kill something, you can just reroll to get more hits because you're only clash 4. Reeling 5s and 6s is really nice. It's good overall, and they're really solid. And them being mainstay allows you to unlock Order of Ashen Dawn, Order of St. Lazarus. Like, I don't think you take these guys to get Order of Crimson Tower or Order of the Sword, because if you're doing that, you might as well take just an order, like a Prior Commander of the Crimson Tower or Prior Commander of the Order of the Sword at that point. Like, that's really kind of what you do. But if you're looking for all horses, Sealed Temple, I believe, is the way to go to get your Ashen Dawn. And I can't sing their praise enough because they're that good. Like, they're that solid, they're that generous, and they come at a decent price at 170, and then plus, like, they're 185 for 3 stands and a banner. Like, it's good. They did work. You'll see it. It's great. I like them. If they were out now, I would be pulling the Crimson Towers out of my bag. I'd be like, sorry boys, here's the shelf. You can go onto the back until you're decent. And I would be putting in 2 units of Order of the Seal Temple. That's how good they are. Like, one of the things I like rate stuff is if I buy 2 boxes, it's good. It's solid. Like, go get yourself 2 boxes. This is an easy 2-box buy, currently. Will this change in the future? I don't know. But currently, it's good. Then we got 2 Order of the Ashen Dawn, Standard Bearer. They got, you know, Bless, Cleave 1, Fearless, and Pack 3, Unstoppable, which they have a really amazing stat line: 4 Clash, 6 Attack, 6 Wounds, 5 Resolve, 4 Defense, no shield. So even them being flank charged, they're still live. Like, I think I have an Order of the Ashen Dawn get flank charged. It's like, because I'm Resolve 5, even with the re-rolling morale, it's like I don't care. Defense 4, like, there's no shield, so they don't get around it. They just have to use their cleave, and it's just, and I'm using that Bless to like fend it off. It's just like, oh, it's so annoying to kill these guys. I really like 3 units, 3 stand units, just because it's more maneuverable. I get to affect more areas of the board, and you really want to get those Ashen Dawn forward as much as possible. Like, there's times where I just march charge them into stuff just to be like, here, deal with it. Like, you're stuck now with Ashen Dawn. And my opponent goes, yeah, I'm gonna Inspire Clash. I'm like, cool. They're like, I get 16 hits. I'm like, cool. You have any cleave? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I roll a bunch of 4s, and then I bless into re-rolling, and I'm like, I only take 2 wounds. And they're like, oh god, what have I done? And I'm like, all right, next turn. Order the Ashen Dawn go. Order the Ashen Dawn and go Inspire and Clash. And then I just roll my dice, and it's just like, and then my opponent's like, oh god. Order Ashen Dawn, probably best unit of 100 Kingdoms. This is the chef's kiss right here. Like, go get 2 boxes. They're that good. All right, next thing, got Imperial Officer. This guy's decked out to be a gun officer. Got the Kiss Farewell, the assassination crossbow. It's from the lore. And Marksman. So Marksman is kind of weird. I'm not sure if it's bugged in the PDF or it's bugged in the army builder or 100%, but from what I last heard, it's supposed to just provide +2 barrage. But if you read it in the army builder, it says you get +2 barrage, but if you don't have a barrage, you get like range 20 with barrage 2 or 3 or something, whatever. So I went with the one that I was kind of told last, and what I kind of heard is confirmed is that it's just +2 barrage. So Kiss Farewell is a gun. It's barrage 3, range 18 with deadly shot. Marksman is +2 barrage, so it goes up to barrage 5. This didn't compute, so it's just barrage 5. And then I have Fire first, aim later, and on your feet. That gives you double time, and that gives you fire in advance. So the play is you move, shoot, move. This guy's sitting in a bunch of Hunter Cadre, so because he's speed 5 and Hunter Cadre is speed 6, the regiment is now speed 5, so you would move up 5. So if your opponent's within 23 inches, you go, okay, cool. You move up 5, you shoot them in the face, and then you just back up 5 inches, and your opponent goes, yay, this is really exciting. And the reason you back up 5 inches is because you move 2.5 back twice because of your double marches. You kind of get like, and that's kind of like the scoot and shoot with them. So you just kind of move up, shoot, back, or, you know, like spin or whatever you want to do. That's kind of what's going on there. You don't have fluid formation with Hunter Cadre, so you can't just shoot out of any arc and really get some moving like you can do with the Imperial Ranger Corps. But it's still good. It's a fun thing you can do. My issue usually is that I start getting a little clogged up on myself, as you can see with the wherever the Hunter Cadre are, but I really like the Hunter Cadre. I'm just gonna scroll down here. I took 4 stands with veterans and gave them the +1 volley, so they go up to volley 3. So they're pretty accurate on the march shoot because they're volley 3, and if they ever take aim, they're even better. They got that Fiend Hunter, and my opponent's running Minotaur Hespices and the 2 Giants, so they're perfectly designed to kill these things because they're armor piercing 1 and they're going to be very accurate. And that's a little bit of what they do, but they also really good at just shooting stuff. And because they're also Clash 3 that they can Inspire to 4 and Cleave 1, they're also good at fighting things as well. I just have them like shoot at stuff and just wait, and I have the Imperial Officer who's a medium. He's just sitting in his zone scoring. And I have a unit of marked crossbows right in front, so that they have to get through the marked crossbows first to even get to the hunter cadre. And if they ever run up, it's like, okay, the hunter cadre can get into them first. So it becomes really good, and I kind of like that. I would say 100 Kingdoms players, grab a unit of 4 hunter cadre in your list, and give them veterans. It's 250 points, and then your officer is another 120. So it's a bit of a package, but it's a good shooting unit. It's very accurate. It's very solid. It'll do damage. That's what I like about it. I also then got 2 units of marked crossbows with standards. I had like 10 points left. I was like, here, put a flag on you guys. Merc crossbows, they are just solid all the time. Like, you can never go wrong with taking merc crossbows. They're so good. More merc crossbows. And finally, the last thing I have here is a 6th stand unit, a Steel Legion, who's veterans for +1 clash. I'll admit, these guys did not make a single attack the entire game. So that's either saying that they died immediately, or they never got into a fight. So that's for you to decide and find out in a bit. But I've already stated what I would change in this list, and that's I would just set these guys to an MSU, so just 3 stands. I might still veterans them, I might not. And then I would dip into a chapter mage with men-at-arms just to have another scoring unit and a character who can still shoot off fireballs and stuff, because it's like, yay, fireballs, or fire darts. Sorry, I'm not a Dweg player. Yeah. That's the list. I played it. I actually liked it. Like, Seal Temple, they're good. They're the good jack of all trades cavalry I think 100 Kingdoms players are like really wanting and looking for. And I would say when these guys come out, if they stay the same as they are, 100 Kingdoms players are not going to be disappointed with them. As for that, I'm going to slow roll my rules, and you can read that at your own desires and wishes. And, pause the video at any time. I'm not your dad. Cool. And let's go check out my opponent's list. Here's my opponent's list. He called it Vanguard. And the reason for this is because he wants to go fast and get stuff off the table. One of the things that city-states might have a bit of an issue with, but there is built-in ways in the faction to solve it and reduce the issue, is that they're a bit slow. And the reason they're a bit slow compared to a lot of other factions is because they don't have banners, so they don't get that +1 march. So people are just speeding up the board because they have that extra inch, which builds over time to increase that distance of how far they went. So having Vanguard on a bunch of stuff and having access to the strategic stack, like infantry tactics from the Warlord, to get, when you draw from the strategic stack, get +1 march, means you can just zip up the table really fast. And this helps out a lot because their infantry seems to be farther back than a lot of other factions, and it's because they are slower because of not having banners. So my opponent here took expert scouts, and he had to take retinue 3 on the arcanists architects to get it. Infantry taxes I already mentioned is basically you draw the card from the strategic stack and you get +1 march and maybe some other stuff. So we can go have a quick look at that. Infantry tactics, where are you? There it is. While this character is on the battlefield, when a friendly regiment activates its command card from the strategic stack, that regiment has +1 to its march checks until the end of the round. In addition, oh yeah, this is just withdrawing. So when they withdraw, you don't have to reform to face away like you're just running off. They instead just like back up. Yeah, they just perform a full backwards march. And when you perform a withdrawal action, you don't roll a die. Ooh, pardon me. They automatically perform a clean withdrawal. This supremacy is considered to always be active. So that's really good. Just, you kind of move around a bit. Kind of gets into that Greek style fighting of like defensively backing up and well-trained soldiers. So cool. Architects 1 through 3. Let's have a quick read of that. Regiment currently gains the unstoppable rule, so it allows you to reroll your charges. That's cool. The character's hand gets +1 wound and attack. Tier 3. Should this character's hand create attack or activate from the strategic attack, this regiment gains impact +2, special roll to the end of the round. What the heck? So on top of getting +1 march, the regiment this character he gets +2 impact. Okay, so it's kind of nice. And expert scouts, I believe, just gives Vanguard. Expert scouts, here we go. Smash is active for the duration of the battle, regardless of the character stands killing the battlefield or not. Friendly infantry rebels of the Phalanx special rule marching onto the battlefield from reinforcement lines gain the Vanguard special rule. So those guys are your Thorakites and your, where are you? Agemas. Yeah, so the Thorakites are the lights with just swords and shields, and the Agemas are the mediums with swords, shields, and cleave. That's basically what it is. And usually I just ask my opponent, like, where the cleave boys at? Where the lights at? and they're going to be the fast ones. So that's not bad. You know, get those units up the table with that Vanguard. That's kind of what's going on there with him. He's the Warlord. Then we got a unit of 4 Phalanges. They're Phalanges. I'll admit, I'm running a bunch of horses. I'll show you how I get around pike formation. It's kind of funny, but these guys don't live very long. Then we got the Thorakites. They got 4 stands, so it's 3 stands for the regular unit, and then they have a Minotaur. What is this? Thrian. This is the 2-handed mace Minotaur. So as you can see, cleave 3 and line breaker. This guy's a damage dealer. he does not fuck around. Then we got a unit of Agema. There's 6 stands. They got cleave 1 with fluid formation. Fluid formation is really fun, especially with expert scouts and the infantry tactics. Like, they're actually speeding right along. The officer, I'm not gonna try and pronounce that, but we will just read it. Oh, here we go. The regiment's command stand gets +2 attacks. In addition, if the regiment activates from the strategic stack, it and character stands get flurry. That's really good because you're class 3 base. You don't have phalanx like the Phalanges or the Hoplites. And you get to inspire to 4, re-rolling 5s and 6. Like that's a damage dealer because they have 5 attacks, and then they're going to get a leader and 2. So the command stand's going to get 8, which is really nice. And they're cleave 1. This is a very good medium unit if you can pull that off. The problem is that it slows down your tempo. So it's one of the things I've noticed with City States is that they have a slower tempo than a lot of other factions. And to explain tempo, it's basically how fast you react to your opponent and deal with problems. And that kind of sets like the tempo of the game. So if you and your opponent are playing a slower game where you're kind of like edging each other, like, oh, I'll bring up a little bit, oh, I'll bring up a little bit, oh, I'm gonna shoot some shots, oh, I'm gonna shoot some stops. Like you're getting into that slower game with tempo. If you guys are just running at each other and charging and killing stuff, and you're like trying to like, okay, that side's broken, I need to bring this thing up so I can defend that side to hold it off to score those points, like that's a faster tempo game. So one of the things I've been noticing about City States as they've been played is that because they have to put cards into that strategic stack, well, not they have to, but because they want to for all the bonuses that the strategic stack has, like getting that +1 march from infantry tactics, getting the flurry from this officer, whatever this stupid thing is called, they slow down their tempo initially. So, you know, they draw their card, they look at it, and they say, I'm going to put that in the strategic stack. Okay, well, now your opponent goes again. So now they're building tempo by going faster. Yes, later on, you can double draw into like your character and then your strategic stack, but if your opponent is front loading all their damage, like probably what they should be, if like, you know, that turn 4 to 6 is happening where like, you know, people are brawling and fighting and it's just like bam, 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 you're losing out on that tempo. And because you moved a card into the strategic stack early on, that thing in the strategic stack might die before you get to draw it. Like that's happened before. I've killed the thing that my opponent put in the strategic stack, and then it was like, okay, last card. It's like, okay, well, I have a strategic stack card. I'm like, okay, cool, and they draw it. It's a dead thing, and it's like, so City States kind of gets slowed down by tempo. And another thing I have to admit is the Aristocrat and the Polemarchs. Is it Battlefield Orders? I'm just gonna go read that up really quick. Battlefield Tactics. Here we go. At the beginning of this character stand's activation, select one of the following battlefield tactics. So this slows down because they're not like traditional draw events or things that you can do a double draw event. They're tied to the character. So this gets into an older bit of game design back in 1.15, was that draw events on characters would be tied to the character card. So you would draw the character card and then they would do their draw events, but would then give it to the unit, and then you would activate the unit. What would slow down your tempo, and you had to kind of find ways to deal with that. And one of the big things was in 100 Kingdoms. So you had, what were the rules? You had Murderous Volley and Fire for Effect. Now, Murderous Volley is the same as it currently is. but what was going on? How do I explain this? Okay, so Murderous Volley, fire for effect. You have Murderous Volley, and it says character draws this card. They can activate 2 orders because it's off of an Imperial officer, and the unit that takes aim and shoots then will do resolve within 12. Okay, so now you've drawn the character, it's activated that, but now you get to resolve a second draw event, and you chose fire for effect. And fire for effect says if your second action is a volley action, you get to do a third free march action. But at the end of fire for effect, it had the line which said draw your next regiment. If that regiment is, or next card out of your command stack, draw that regiment. If your regiment is the regiment that the character stand is attached to, activate that regiment. So you would draw the character, choose Murderous Volley, then you would choose fire in advance, and then you would draw your next card, what is the regiment that character's in, because you would set up in your deck in advance, and then you would activate that regiment, gaining the benefit of both draw events. Now a lot of that stuff has been shifted to the regiments themselves. So you don't have to draw the character to activate them anymore. You just draw the regiment. Oh, the Imperial officer's there. It says on his PDF thing or his army book listing when this regiment can activate 2 draw events. These 2 draw events are given to the regiment the character stand is in them, and then you just do it. So your tempo is not lost. But in 1.15, there was a workaround where if you just took Murderous Volley and not fire for advance, and that's what I did when I started, when I was learning the game. Like I got, still trying to figure stuff out, learning stuff, all that. So it slowed down my tempo. And that's what City States is kind of dealing with as one of their issues, is that they are a slower tempo faction, and they're kind of getting bit by it because people will play faster lists that have higher tempo to deal damage, to kill their opponent's stuff before they take damage. Like, everything in this game can die, except for a few things, looking at you, Dweg, and you got to expect everything to die. But if you can kill your opponent before they kill you, you live. There you go. There's my tempo rant. Next, on the, what is it? Aristocrat, or Arista-Arc. There we go. We got a Promethean. This is the medium monster. 10 attacks, 14 wounds, resolve 4, defense 3, evasion 1. He's got like harden 1. Herald the Forge God is basically gives him priest 2. Well, he has priest 2, but how he gets his spells off because he needs 4 successes. Got clench blades and tempered resolve. I believe one gets like +1 attacks and one gives like +1 defense or something. Clench blades. Here we go. All friendly regiments with an 8. Reroll hit rolls a 6 and add +1 to their class characteristics to a maximum of 4. That's really good, especially on everything with phalanx because you can't inspire when you have phalanx. And what was the other one? Those clench blades. Tempered resolve. All friendly regiments with an 8 may reroll defense and morale rolls of 6. That's also really good. Both are solid. It's a great support giant, and I'm happy that's a medium, so it comes on early to help out. And it's good overall. You kind of want this thing to go first to do damage, and then have something else to come up and kill whatever it's fighting, or maybe it like killed whatever it was fighting, and then you have something come up to get in the way so it doesn't die, so it can kind of like do that leapfrog. Next, we got the Polomark. Guy's got Battlefield Tactics, Flurry and Shield, Stand of the Last Orient, and Architect 1. I don't know why I keep saying Arcane 1. Probably because it's A. So Stand of the Last Orient is... Where are you? You were in here. This does give you something. The regiment this character stands carrying attached always counts as being under the effects of Inspired, even if another special rule like Phalanx or Automation special rules normally prohibit the regiment from doing so. Cool. You get Inspired if you have Phalanx. Nice. It's good. This guy's in a unit of Hoplites. Good job, Hoplites. You're now Clash 3. They got a Minotaur Hespis, get some more damage. They got 6 stands, that includes the Minotaur Hespis, so watch out for list building, because I was building this, and it was like, why am I like 275 points? It's because I added 6 stands of Hoplites and then a Minotaur Hespis, while it should have been 5 stands of Hoplites and then a Minotaur Hespis. Then we got a unit of Minotaur Hespises, just 3. They're a good medium. Vanguard with speed 6, so they're like up the table 18 inches, so they get in the way and be like that offensive hammer. They're a very good medium brute because they got cleave 1. They're defense 3 with a shield. Like they'll do damage. You just got to be careful though, because any bit of cleave will just start cutting through them, and they end up dying a little quick. And some harder hitting things will just wipe them out before they can really do anything. But they will do damage and kill stuff, especially if they get that flank charge. And finally, we have the Hespian with the Trident Giant. Trident Strike, real good, bunch more damage. Crucible Fire actually was used this game. Yeah, I know, right? So basically, the Hespian did a march charge to get into combat with a bunch of Sealed Temple, and then had 4 Priest Dice and got the roll off for Crucible Fire, and then I activated and took some Crucible Fire hits. So that Aura of Death actually came up. So there is niche cases for both these, like for the Crucible Fire spellbook as Aura of Death, but majority of the time you're just going to use Try and Strike. So overall, that's the city states list I played into. I'm going to slow roll the rules so you can have a look at that. And, you know, pause the video at any time. Reach your heart's content. And yeah, let's go look at the scenario. Today's scenario is played on Forlorn Hope. So we got 4 zones. We got 2 6-inches right here and 2 12s right here. And then we got 2 neutral objectives right there and right there. The big thing you got to know about the scenario is that you can't reinforce from the middle 2 feet of the table. So you're kind of just like bringing everything you got just from your table edge forward. Like, these zones are only a foot up the table, so it's actually very easy to get into them because the 6-inch zone is, you know, a foot up the table and 3 inches back. So you only need to march 9 inches, and you can just do a march like turn 1 to get in there. So you can easily get into these zones. I should talk about scoring. So for scoring, you get 3 VPs for killing the neutral objectives. Then you get 2 VPs for every zone you're seizing. You get an additional 4 for seizing 3 or more. You get 2 for the Warlord, 2 for every character, and 2 for every regiment. So it's pretty killy. And the thing is that I'm going to use this color. It kind of comes a line right here, and you're looking to kind of break through and get into your opponent's zone, just so that you can start scoring that or contesting it, because you'll kind of like trade back and forth, and usually there's a piece of terrain about here that blocks these two, and that's usually what gets played on like our local tables. Is there's a line of sight blocking terrain in the middle, so you can't see that, and usually it's just a big freaking building. So usually you want something that can handle your objective nice and easy early on, so that you can then focus on your opponent, because if your opponent is stuck fighting their objective longer than you, it allows you to get advantage for positioning, what then you can use to just keep pressuring them to then hopefully kill enough stuff or keep them further back so you can get something on their zone and start working on their regiment so that you can start contesting and scoring that zone. So yeah, it's a good scenario overall. I don't mind it. It's got some stuff going for it. Maybe I want like the 6-inch zones a little closer so that like it's, you know, it's a little easier to get to. Like if they were up, maybe use this color like here, and maybe keep the 12ers back so that you can kind of easily get into those ones more, but they're still neutral. So yeah, that's the scenario we played on. That's kind of what your goals are. Let's go look at the table. Here's the table. We got the 6-inch over here, 6-inch over here, 12 over here, 12 over here, neutral objective, and there's another neutral objective right behind this building. So that's what we're playing on. We only got 5 pieces of terrain. It kind of gets a little like messy for terrain and how the terrain rules are, because once you place something in the middle and how the zones are, and because you can't place anything in the zones, you kind of lock out a lot of terrain placement and what can go where and how much you can actually have to really be relevant. Like, yeah, we can throw more terrain on, but it's just in like irrelevant spots that don't even matter. So it's just like, whatever. For terrain, we have 2 size 1 obstructions, a size 3 obstruction, and 2 size 2 obstructing forests. And yeah, some paths we got clear path here, and we got a clear path here. Melee units that try and charge up into the objective will then, you know, kill it and then have to like reform and march, so that slows them down getting anywhere else because they got to go around this table, or not this table, this big ass tower. And but it's too open, and it kind of just happens because of the terrain rules that are currently written, because you can't have terrain in zones, but it's like you're locking yourself out because you also can't have terrain within 9 inches of other terrain. I think my opponent was also measuring like 9 inches between zones as well, because I didn't set this table, they did. So blame it on you, man. Delegate blame. Roll for blame. That was like an old WoW thing when I played WoW. It was like roll for blame. But yeah, it's not bad for a table. We made sure that there was 9 inches between the edge and any of the other terrain, so you can kind of sneak stuff around there. But it really becomes fights in this area and this area. And it just kind of goes from there. And then the table's split in, you know, kind of like this, it ends up being. So you'll see how that plays out, but that's kind of what goes on there. Yeah, it's the terrain. There's a bit of me that just really wishes PB would get onto the scenario and like kind of fix some of these problems that are popping up. And because what happens is, and what I see from the scenario packet and terrain and how it's written, is that there's like 5 table layouts, and that's it, because it's so restrictive. Like, it's so weird not having terrain in zones. Like, put a forest in a zone, open some stuff up, put some water in zones, get some stuff in the zones. All right, with that, let's go look at turn 1. Here's turn 1, and I auto bring on my Imperial Officer and Hunter Cadre, and I roll my 4 downs for both my Merc crossbows. So all my lights are on the table. My opponent only has 1 light, and they brought on their, the light sword boys. I don't know what they're called, like off the top of my head. I think they're the Agmas. You can kind of see them over there a little bit. And then you got your Minotaur with a hammer auxiliary, and then they got their Polyarch character. So my opponent brought the Polyarch over there, but they're going to seek new escort out of that really quick because they want to get that Vanguard going and the infantry tactics. So they need the character on the table as soon as possible, and that's why they're there. Because of infantry tactics and everything, and that expert scouts, my opponent just Vanguard right at the table and is trying to get this unit into your objective that's hiding behind this tower. I do take another photo for turn 2. It kind of shows it a bit better, but this tower is just like right in the way of the objective, but it's the same as mine. For myself, I just run up the table, got my Vanguard from the Imperial Officer, so everyone's running up the table like 16 inches, and I make sure that my front arc just touches that. So both these guys just can see that, so it allows me to shoot it next turn, because I plan to just shoot the objective to death with all my regiments. And the Hunter Cadre, I believe only 2 of these stands are within 9. So it's like these 2. But that's still enough to get the three different regiment shots I need to kill this thing so that I can kill it, get those points, and then keep moving forward next turn. And as well as my Imperial Officer is in the zone so that I can, start scoring that. I do use the double time and fire in advance stuff to kind of like, I shimmy over. Shoot, a double shimmy over here. Because why not? I could do that. You got that little bit of movability because of those battlefield orders. I start using it actually a bunch with the Hunter Cadre, and it actually works out pretty well, just to give myself that slight movement that I need to just kind of get there. So that's my plan. Get rid of the objective. My opponent is looking to try and get rid of their objective. They're going to be slower at it because they don't have really any range units, but also because they're going to try and get impacts into their objective, followed up with a clash. They're only going to 2 damage, while I have a higher chance of just doing 3 to just kill it off. So then let's go look at turn 2. Here's turn 2, and you can see from this picture that I took it a little more up, so you can see that unit of Agmas over there. And let's start. So I auto bring on my Sealed Temple that are going to be proxied by 2 Crimson Towers and a Mounted Squire. And I roll for my next unit, and I just get a 4, and I don't get it. My opponent auto brings on their Cleave 1 Sword and Shield boys. And then they roll, and they succeed on getting their Phalanges and their Minotaur Hespeces. So that's really great. So first thing I do I win the roll off? I have more cards than my opponent, and there are times where I do win the roll off and times I don't. But I think I win the roll off for this one, and I just, shoot the objective. Like, Merc crossbows, shoot the objective marker, about here-ish. Cool, got the damage. My opponent goes. I believe he charges the objective. So he just kind of moves in, charges his objective. I'm just going to draw a green box right there. And he has brutal impact on the Minotaur Thespis, but I roll the 1 and save it, and then all his other impact attacks only like 1 hit, and then I roll the 3 and save it, so he doesn't do any impact damage. And then he does his clash, and the Minotaur has like cleave 3, so it just does the point of damage. So now his objective is on 2 health left, and mine's dead, as you can see, so I don't have to worry about that light regiment anytime soon, and I can deal with other stuff for a while before I have to go deal with them. That's really good for me. Next, I have the other Merc Crossbow unit go. Shoot the objective! Yay! My opponent then has the Cleave 1 Sword and Shield boys go. They just run up the table. I then go. I have the Hunter Cadre. They just move over 2.5 inches, get another stand in. 3 stands, shoot the objective! Yay! Killing the objective, scoring me like 3 points or whatever. I then, because I marched and shot, I trigger fire in advance, so I get into their march, so I just move 2.5 inches this way. And then because I made 2 marches, I do another march, so I move another 2.5 inches this way. And that's really just to kind of threat project and like allow myself to see things more. And that's really what I'm doing there with that shimmy. So my objective's down, projecting my range threats. My opponent's got to come at me, and I'm looking to have my Hunter Cadre next turn start targeting down these Minotaur Hespis because he just has them run up the table. Next thing I have is my Sealed Temple go. They just run up the table. Yay! My opponent then seeks new escort from their Polemarch into their Cleave 1 Shieldy boys. And then I believe my opponent just runs his phalanges up so that everything's ready there. My opponent, sees the Sealed Temple coming. Phalanges are going to try and run in front to go deal with that. I have archers, they're going to shoot. Like, we're setting up we're taking out those objectives. We're scoring those zones, and we're looking to now get into this next bit of fighting. So, because I have my Sealed Temple in that 6-inch zone right here, I score that. I got my Imperial Officer medium character in that zone, I score that. My opponent has a medium in their 12-inch zone, and then they have the medium Minotaur Hespis in their 6-inch zone. So we both score 4 points, but I'm up by 3 points because I killed the objective. So next turn, we're going to see how this plays out and where we go and what we're killing next. Let's go have a look at that. Here we go. Back to a normal table kind of setup shot, and this one's a bit wide, as you can see on the left there is another unit of Sealed Temple. So things would happen. I auto bring on my Order of Ashen Dawn. And then I have my Sealed Temple. They get rolled, I get the 4 down, so they auto bring on. So all my mediums are on, and 1 out of my 3 heavies are on. The character the character with the Ashen Dawn and the Steel Legion, they didn't make it, so it's like, okay, whatever, not the end of the world. I have my Merc Crossbows, I believe, on the left activate, and they just take aim and shoot at the Minotaur Hespises, who are just here. My opponent then has their phalanges go, who just run up. And I'm like, okay, cool. I then have my Hunter Cadre, who I believe just take aim and just like shoot into the Minotaur Hespis. And because they're Fiend Hunter, I get to re-roll all their shots. So volley 4 because of take aim, re-rolling 5s and 6s. I think I hit all of them except for like 2 AP1. Their defense through the shield go down to 2. I got a deadly shot Imperial Officer who's volley 3. Slaughters the Minotaur Hespis, scoring me points, getting rid of that. I don't have to deal with them. Cool. My opponent then either has the Hoplite block run up to get into that zone and score it, but that's fine because I'm not really caring that much. I then have my Merc Crossbows start shooting at these phalanges. You can kind of see in the back there 2 wounds are removed, but they're starting that work. And then my opponent has the the light Sword and Shield boys fight on that objective again. So now it's down to, I believe, 2 wounds. What was it last turn? This is turn 3. 2. Yeah, so it'll be down to 2, or it'll have taken 2 wounds. Now it's down to 1, so they're still fighting it. So I'm not worried, but I'm just gonna use this color. But I have this big area right here that I'm controlling just by shots. And you can see on the left here that I'm bringing up some Sealed Temple to kind of like get that flank charge going as the Hoplites or anyone else moves up to just take those shots so I can get them from the side. So I'm kind of setting up a kill box on that left side. and I currently have no reason to move up. I just need to set up and keep hammering them with shots because they have to come towards me. My opponent is coming towards me on the on the right side, but I use the fluid formation on the sealed temple to just kind of go on the side here, and then I double march this way, and then I just spend the last little bit of my march to kind of rotate myself back to a decent position. And my opponent and I, we grabbed the laser, we put down some sticks, and we checked it so that I am just outside of their front arc. So if they want to charge my sealed temple, they will have to do a reform or a march wheel, then a charge, or any of that stuff. So they're not going to actually do any damage to the sealed temple, but they will pin them. However, that's going to open up for my next move, what is my Ashen Dawn getting onto that zone to score it, and to start either countercharging or moving forward into the phalanges, or even just getting into the Thorakites if I do my next game plan well. And I've kind of broken down the pictures a bit for the next turn, for turn 4, so you can see it better. So for scoring, I killed this unit right here, scored 2 points. Scored 2 points because I got Ashen Dawn on that zone, scored 2 points because I got this. I get the double, so I get another 2 points. My opponent is scoring their 6-inch zone and their 12-inch zone. They get another 4 points, but I'm starting to build that score lead. I'm starting to kill their stuff. I'm starting to put out threats and forcing my opponent to bad decisions, to taking hits, because if they sit there and trying to score, I'm already outscoring them, and I'm just going to keep shooting at them because I don't need to come forward, but I'm setting up to deal with their stuff because they know that they need to come forward, and now I'm getting myself ready to deal with anything they have. So I believe the next pictures are a breakdown of what I do with the sealed temple on the right. So before we leave this turn and go to turn 4 in that breakdown, just look at the sealed temple on the right, remember where they are, and we'll get into them. So let's go have a look at that. So if you recall, this unit was basically like this. Boop. And then the next thing I did was I activate them. So this is start of turn 4, and I win the roll off, and I perform a reform, and I basically spin them around and on an angle here because I plan to charge like so, connect, and then go flush. And I kind of break this down. So they're going to, I'm going to use blue. They're going to declare a charge into the side of those phalanges, so I'm going to ignore phalanx, I'm going to ignore the pike formation, and they're going to get to about here-ish, because, you kind of wheel, like, up to a maximum of 90, and that's not 90, like, this would be 90, so I can easily get there. And we're going to go to the next picture now, because you're going to see them in that, roughly that position. Oh, here's the next picture. I didn't take a middle one. So, as they were before, they were like so, when I did the wheel, and then I just marched them in, bing, so I get to there, and then the next photo is just me going to close the door, so bing, kind of close the door. We shifted this around because like I had enough free space and everything, and I'm like, well, I just want to have this stance connecting, and I'm talking to my opponent, like that's my intent, is just have one stand, like full on with one stand, because I was never going to get this stand back here into contact no matter what because of this terrain feature. And so, like, that's my intent. That's what I want to do. Do you agree to do that? And he's like, yeah, you have plenty of wiggle room and movement there. You can easily, like, go from there. Then go to here. And I'm just drawing lines. To then march forward, hit, and then go flush, as you can see here. And I was like, okay, cool. We talked about it. And it's really just that conversation with your opponent on how to do that and to achieve your goals. Because, like, you're playing a game with hopefully a friend or someone you can put up with, and you just want to have that conversation and be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, this is my intent, do you believe I can do all this with this movement? I got like all this free space. And they're like, yeah, you can do that. Like, a lot of people are pretty cordial about it, and they'll agree with you if you can like show all the steps and everything. Because I'll admit, a lot of the time when I move my stands, like there's no trays underneath here, and I'm hopefully gonna have trays the next month or two, is that when I try and do that slides and stuff, I usually hit like terrain pieces like this flat mat or stuff as I'm moving through it, and my stands like basically crash into each other, and I fuck up the positioning. It's like, okay, well, fuck, now I've ruined the board state because my hands are crap, and I'm trying to do this delicate move here, and they're like, well, we've already discussed it, you've kind of shown the theory on how to get there, Isn't very hard to actually do it, so, you know, just go. And it's like, okay, cool. So we set that up, and there they are. So they're now on the side of phalanges, and we're gonna go to the next picture, what's like the big end, like, you know, the end of turn 4 or whatever. But this is how I got here. This is what I did. This is the fluid information powered of the sealed temple. And this is one of the things I actually like about them, because you can just do that. You can just run past someone, fluid formation, spin, and then charge them in the side, and they're great at it. They're fast at that speed 8. They do some decent damage. They don't have any cleave or anything, but they're still clash 3, inspiring to 4. They got 4 impacts. Like, they're doing well, and they're defensible with that defense 3, shield with 4, resolve 4. Like, they're a jack of all trades cavalry unit, and I like them. They're good, and this is something you can do with them, and I hope more players do, and I'm excited for them to come out, because I think they're going to be really good for 100 Kingdoms. So let's go look at the full turn 4. Here's the full turn 4. And after my explanation of the phalanges, or sorry, not the phalanges, the sealed temple, you can kind of see that the phalanges are gone. What happened? So, turn 1, I go first. And I should talk about things that came on first. So, things that came on, just really quick, is these Ash and Dawn with the prior commander character. Steel Legion still didn't show up, not the end of the world. My opponent got a Trident Giant over here and a Hammer Giant over there, and that's their full list on, so I'm still waiting for my Steel Legion, but that's fine. And then I win the roll off to go first. I do the movement that I showed before in the previous couple pictures to get the Sealed Temple into the side of the phalanges. I deal a bunch of damage, and I believe the phalanges are left on like 2 HP. I'm like, okay, cool. My opponent goes. They can't get their Thorakites or whatever, the Cleave 1 guys, into the Sealed Temple because the phalanges are in the way. And what do they do? They either have the Cleave or the Light Shield boys kill off that objective finally to score those points, or they have these Hoplites just move up the table. That's about it. One of those two things happen. So it's like, okay, cool. The next thing I do is that I have my order of Ash and Dawn go. They can move up, so they just do kind of like a wheel march. And then I just declare a charge and I just get into the Thorakites to pin them, to keep them down, get out of the way, and I'm just in the zone. Like, all 3 of those stands are in the zone. So now I'm starting to get into that contesting, so I just got to kill more stands. I've got to get Sealed Temple into there, and that's fine. They then have the Cleave guys go. They just dump a bunch of attacks into the Ash and Dawn. Ash and Dawn, you know, use their Bless to reroll defense rolls. And I think this Ash and Dawn right here, he's like just down to 1 HP. And I'm like, okay, whatever, there you go. And my opponent's like, great. I then activate, have my Merc Crossbows go. They just shoot into the phalanges, killing them off, scoring me another 2 points, and freeing up the Sealed Temple now. So that's really good. Then I have my opponent at some point resolves the other one, so it's either the Light Sword and Shield boys with the 2-headed Minotaur kill off the objective, or the Hoplites move up. But I have the Merc Crossbows go. They just shoot into this unit, and I think I take out the backstand. So I'm like, yay, sweet. One of these giants come up. I think it's this guy. So this giant just comes up, gets into the kitty corner, prepping to do that leapfrog that I talked about during the list building of run up, kill stuff, have the Hoplites move up to defend it, run up, kill stuff, you know, kind of leapfrog. And so he's setting that up now. I believe my Hunter Cadre shoot a couple shots, just move up a little bit or whatever, just shoot a couple shots into the Hoplites. But my opponent has that, you know, making me reroll 1s, their defense 4, taking 1 AP, so I don't do very much damage. I think I only just kill 1 in the back there, as you can see. There's only 3 of them. Then my opponent has his Trident Strike Giant run up. He's looking to get that side charge, kind of cover up that side, because he sees my second unit Sealed Temple, you know, moving up. And I just kind of like rotate them, like I just move and reform, and I'm like 15.1 away, so my opponent has to do a march charge with his giant to get to me. And I don't care if that giant sits there or is trying to, you know, like, psych me out, because eventually the Hunter Cadre, the Merc Crossbows, and this unit of Ash and Dawn that runs up at the very end are going to deal with, I'm just going to select in green, this Hoplite and that giant, and maybe the lights in the middle. So I'm not worried because Ashen Dawn are just so tanky and I can just get into a fight that I'm just looking to just get the Ashen Dawn up the table and just have enough space so that the Merc crossbows and the Hunter Cadre can just shoot in from the sides to deal damage. And my opponent's kind of in a pretty precarious situation right now because his entire list is on the table and I've already taken 2 units and he hasn't killed a single thing of mine. Then we got scoring, so my opponent scores this objective and this objective, getting a 4. I only scored the 12-inch zone for 2 points because I got nothing on the 6-inch zone that could score, but I'm not worried because I've decided to give up a bit of points because I was ahead to go get more board position to push my opponent back, to start fighting them, to start getting into their zones and start threatening them and making them feel that pressure. I know the Steel Legion are automatically coming on, and I already know that their whole thing is just go sit on the 6-inch zone because everything else is so far forward that I just need something to score that zone, and right now, sadly, Steel Legion, that's going to be your job. So let's go look at turn 5 and we'll see how the rest of this game plays out. Here is turn 5, and as you can see, more stuff is gone. Things that go first. So I believe my opponent wins the roll-off, has their Cleave 1 guys go. I declare my supremacy to get blessed on all the Sealed Temple, all the Ashen Dawn. And if you already have blessed, you can get Harden 1 or +1 attack, so I choose to go for Harden 1. And my opponent's Cleave unit activates first, goes into the Ashen Dawn. My Ashen Dawn activate blessed. They do not suffer from Cleave because they have Harden 1, and they just save all the hits except 1, and that 1 was just enough to deal the damage to kill from my 3 stands down to my 2. And I'm like, oh, okay, not the end of the world, like, that happens. My Ashen Dawn then go. They then do a bunch of damage to the Cleave 1 boys, and I think they're down to 4 stands, and I'm starting to, like, control that zone. My opponent then activates, has the light shield unit go, and they just side charge into my Ashen Dawn, so they have to perform a reform because they can't see them, and they just side charge. They do a bit of damage through the impact attacks and the brutal impact from the Minotaur, but they're not doing any more damage. I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. Then we're kind of looking at it. I then decide to have the Sealed Temple go. They spin around. Do they spin around? Actually, I think these Merc crossbows go and they just shoot at the Hoplite block that was here. I'm just gonna draw a square. So either the Sealed Temple go or my Merc crossbows go. I think it's the Merc crossbows. They just shoot into the Sealed Temple or into the Hoplite block, get some damage in there, kill off a stand. My opponent is then humming and hawing. They eventually just decide to march charge their giant right into the Sealed Temple. They do 2 hits. I think I saved them all, but because they do 2 hits, they have 4 dice, so they do their Crucible of Fire. And my opponent chooses to do the Aura of Death spell because I haven't activated that Sealed Temple unit yet. And I'm going to take Aura of Death 7, so that's going to be damage. I'll just explain that. I eventually activate these guys. They take their 7 hits. I take 3 out of the 7, so the one guy on the very end there is down to 1 health. And then they do like 6 to 8 damage back to the giant. Cool, that's fine with me. My opponent eventually runs his Hoplites, just does a march charge into these Merc crossbows. I believe he also draws them from the strategic stack to get them like that +1 march, so they get up there faster. Or no, I think does he draw them from the thing to get +2 impacts? It's one of the two. Like I think he just march charges and does a bunch of impact damage and resolve. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just losing Merc crossbows. Like I've already shot with them. I don't care. There's like 2 stands left. Whatever. I have my Sealed Temple at some point go. I've already talked about that. They killed the Cleave boys with their Wrath attack, so I'm controlling that. Hunter Cadre go. They just shoot at the Hoplites, do a bunch of damage. I'm just gonna draw a box here. They're like sitting like this, but my opponent has the reroll 1s on, so it's, you know, limiting my damage. That's fine because I'm not planning to kill them off with the range units. I'm planning just to weaken them. And finally, as you can see, my Ashen Dawn right here just go in, hit the Hoplites, do a bunch of impact attacks, do a bunch of clashes, wipe them out. That's it. So now I've wiped out character and regiment. I'm scoring the zone. That's all good there. This unit of Merc crossbows just shoots into the side of the Agmas and does enough damage to break them, so they're not like contesting. If someone wants to write in the comments, does broken allow you to still contest? Let me know, because off the top of my head, I can go recheck the rules, but off the top of my head, broken doesn't allow you to contest, and you can't inspire and you can't control with it. So just let me know if broken allows you to still contest. That's the thing, because I don't think it does, because like you can break units to stop them from scoring and contesting, so that you can actually score stuff, and that's kind of a way around it now, because broken has more effects than it did previously. So yeah, just let me know. So that happens there. My opponent then has his medium giant right over here, does a reform and then a charge into my Ashen Dawn. And with the impact attacks from that, they kill off one more Ashen Dawn, so that Ashen Dawn unit is broken. I'm not super worried, I'm just kind of like, whatever. And then I just have my Steel Legion run up the table, so that I can score that zone. Right here. Because I believe that broken prevents you from scoring, and because the Ashen Dawn are currently broken, I am not scoring this 12-inch zone, because I only have 2 mediums while my opponent has 3 stands, because it has a giant in there, what's a monster stand, what's considered 3 stands. Everyone else is broken who's in that zone, so if we're following that logic, they're not contesting or scoring. But I am scoring the 2 bottom zones for another 4 points, and I filled a bunch of myself. So my opponent's not really doing well. One of his regiments broken. He's a giant that's going to be fighting a ton of stuff. That's probably going to go down. His other giant is at half health, and there's, you know, Hunter Cadre and Sealed Temple ready to kill that thing, and Ashen Dawn on the left. Like, it's just kind of falling apart for my opponent, and this is the end of turn 5. We're going to go to turn 6, and you'll kind of see it wrapped up there. So let's have a look at that. Here's turn 6. First thing I do is I have the Ashen Dawn go. I believe I win this roll off, and the Ashen Dawn activates, unbreaks itself, and then clashes into the light sword and shield boys with the 2-handed Minotaur. And I just need to do like 3 damage, and I just roll terribly, and I only do what is it? I think 2 damage, and like my opponent made all their saves and everything, and I'm like, ah, damn. And so the Minotaur has 1 health left, and it's like, oh my god. So then my opponent goes and has the giant here go. He activates, does a bunch of damage to the Ashen Dawn. I was saving my Bless for this, so I use my Bless and I survive a bunch of it. I think that Ashen Dawn at the end of this is down to 2 health, because then I have my Sealed Temple go. They activate over here. They fight this giant who gets down to like 2 wounds, and I'm like, okay, cool. I then have, then my opponent has that giant activate, you know, kill off those Sealed Temple. As you can see, they are dead. Oh no. Or maybe this giant activated next and then killed that. Yeah, maybe that's what happened. I'm not really 100%, but that's fine, because I believe I have my Hunter Cadre just take aim and like shoot at it, and then I have these Merc crossbows like take aim and shoot at it, and basically it gets down to 2 health, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go deal with that later on the next turn. I just have my Ashen Dawn just run up the table. My opponent unbreaks himself here, has the Minotaur and the last sword boys trying to kill the Ashen Dawn. I get down to 2 health and I'm fine. I then have the Merc crossbows go and just kind of shoot into them. My opponent has 2 health down left on that unit. Steel Legion just sit on the zone and score it. Sealed Temple sit on the zone and score it. Imperial Officer sits on the zone and scores it. Ugh, I'm getting a little tongue twisty here. And Ashen Dawn are now just running up, scoring that zone. So I score a bunch of points here, get my double points, and my opponent calls it, because between his 2 remaining units, he only has 3 runes left. And he has killed 1 unit of Sealed Temple finally on turn 6. Yeah. So let's have a look at the score, and I'll do an endgame chat about this overall. Here's the score. I have 45 to my opponent's 19. Right there, you know, those are my dials. I dinged it up to turn 7, but it was at the end of round 6. And so Yeah, it's the list I played is actually surprisingly effective. I like the ranged elements with the tankiness of the Ashen Dawn. It's very supporty. It kind of starts getting into that Dweg play where Dweg players will take kind of like hold warriors, hold thanes, flame berserkers, initiates, anything that's like kind of fast and cheap that they have that has good defensive stats because it's Dweg, to just hold stuff off while while their ranged components do a bunch of work. However, with Ashen Dawn, they're doing damage with that cleave 1, and they're so survivable. Hunter Cadre are doing damage, Merc crossbows are doing damage because they can just sit there and shoot all game. And sometimes you roll poorly and sometimes you don't, but if you can just keep, like, if your opponent's going to be there forever, just walk up within effective range and then just take aim and just keep shooting because now you're volley through with more shots. Sealed Temple. Fantastic, great jack of all trades unit. I really like them, and I would not be surprised if more players play them when they come out. They were that good. I kind of explained this more in the list building part of this episode, but they're the perfect jack of all trades cavalry unit that 100 Kingdom players kind of want / need, and they do it really well, and they unlock the best unit that 100k has, what is the Ashen Dawn. Like, they're perfect for that whole setup. And I kind of also talked about things I would change in the list. Like, I would cut back on, Steel Legion, and throw in a Fire Mage with Men-at-Arms, just to score those back zones and get the Steel Legion up the table, because they don't need to be scoring back zones, they need to be up the table killing stuff. As for my opponent, when we were playing, I did talk about them being fast with that Vanguard, and I was like, whoa, that's the city-states, you're really up the table there. But it kind of gets into that tempo that I talked about during their list building, where because they have to activate the characters to get those powerful buffs of like rerolling 6s on defense rolls, making your opponent reroll 1s on shooting attacks, all those things. It slows down what they're doing, allowing your opponent to hit them faster. Putting cards in the strategic stack allows your opponent to hit you faster. Like, when you're playing this, you kind of start putting all the things that need to get done right away at the top of your deck, and the things that don't need to get done right away near the bottom of your deck. So if your opponent is slowing down their play and choosing the things that don't need to get done first, you can start hurting the things that they need to do work with sooner, meaning they have less ability to fight you back. And that kind of happens with city states, because they have to activate the characters to get those buffs, puts them, slows them down. They have to put cards in the strategic stack to then trigger the +2 attacks and flurry and stuff like that, slows them down. Like, that's probably why in this game where I was like, oh, what happened next? Like, I think this happened, is because my opponent is activating characters to get buffs. My opponent is putting cards into strategic stack, all those things. And so it slows them down, and it's not as maybe beneficial of a buff to the faction as it is. Like, there are times where it's like, no, I need things to go now because my opponent has 50 million things around my face and I need to start dealing with them. I don't have time to put stuff in the strategic stack, because by the time I redraw it from the strategic stack, that thing is dead or wounded enough it's not doing any damage. Like, that's kind of the issue I start seeing with city states. Overall, it was a good game. My opponent and I had a great time playing it. I think my opponent had to make a choice right off the beginning, and I think that choice was to not go for their objective. I think they should have had a giant go for that objective later on in the game, not right away. Like, I go for it early because I usually have things designed to kill it quickly at the start. Like, I had 3 range units, and if, let's say, I only got one of those guys on, I would have just moved up, shot at it, and, kept going, because it's like, we gotta get stuff done. But the other range units would have ran up the table the next turn, and so on. So I have ways to deal with it. I think because my opponent only had 1 light, and yes, they could do impacts and do a clash and do potentially 2 damage, and then, clash at the next turn to kill it and then get going. It kind of gets into mounted squires. What I found with mounted squires are not the greatest objective killers, because they only have like impact 2. And you're usually running like 3 of them, sometimes 4, so you're only doing like 6 to 8 hits. And if you veterans and get the inspire and all that stuff, like if you take veterans, you're clash 3, and you only have like 8 attack. Like, it's very like 50-50, and there's been times where it's like, I've only gotten 1 successful impact, and my opponent rolled the 3, and I'm like, okay, I do no damage, like, great. It's too iffy. Like, you kind of want something more secure to kill it. And so if I can like shoot at it at effective range and get 7 hits at AP1, I have a good chance that my opponent's not going to make like 7 hits at AP1 and roll a 6 or something to do it. But this game, my opponent only got 2 successful impact attacks, and one of them was Cleave 2 or Brutal Impact 2, and I rolled the 1, and so that's not doing damage, and the other one I rolled the 3, and that wasn't doing any damage, and so now they were stuck there for way too long. While if they were to redo it, I think they should just left the objective alone and committed a giant to kill it later on, because the giant would have rolled up, hit it with impact, hit it with their melee attack, hit it with damage, or just, if it was the medium giant, hit it with impacts, hit it with melee, and then like hit it again, trigger their spells, put out those buffs. It's in a great spot right in the middle of the table. So maybe they should have saved it for the medium giant to go deal with it and just use it as a buff, like a buff beater. It's like, oh, I'm hitting something, I'm casting spells, ooh, here we go, like stuff like that. So I think that was a mistake for them, because they needed stuff forward up in me fast, but because of how city-states work, they were slow about it, and they chose their fast flight regiment to be slow about it by dealing with the objective, while they had other things later on that could have dealt with it. And that would have been more beneficial to them, to having that thing, like the light regiment, up in my face faster. Because then they could have gone for the Merc crossbows, killed off a unit of Merc crossbows, try and get into my zone. Now I'm trying to fight those guys off of Sealed Temple, allowing other things like the Cleave 1 sword and shield guys to kind of get up the table more, have the phalanges get into a better position, because now I'm dealing with their stuff, because, you know, they're just running. Just run those guys forward. And I can't ignore them, because they have a two-handed Mace Minotaur who will do damage and kill stuff, so I gotta deal with it. Overall, good game. For some shameless self-plugging, Bonk Table has a Discord channel. Go check that out. Link in the description below. We also have a podcast. You can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. By the time this comes out, I think like episode 5 should hopefully be out. Maybe like for sure 4, but maybe 5 will be out when you listen to this. And we've kind of talked about movement and positioning, core rules changes, scenario. We're getting into the army list changes, and the next one is going to be about terminology. So like it's all about like, what is a hammer, what is an anvil, what is a tar pit, what is a speed bomb, all that stuff. And then I believe the next one after that, coming down the pipe, is going to be about list building and army list building, so that'll be a fun one. And yeah, I hope everyone's enjoying these and having a good time. I'm continuing always looking to like grow and expand the channel and all the other stuff we do, and I'm having a great time making it. So I hope you guys all have a great day. Bye!